Good evening, everyone. My name is Gregory Thompson, and today I'll be presenting a presentation on TEAC Standard 8, and that standard is creating an academically challenging environment. All right, well, let's first define what the standard is. So, Standard 8 is where a teacher creates a student-centered academic environment in which learning and teaching occur at high levels and the students are self-directed learners. So why do we need this, right? How does an academically challenging environment impact student achievement? What are the guiding principles behind that? Well, the first thing you need to think about is the fact that learning is a cognitive process where learners construct meaning and understanding through interactions and experiences. So, particularly for young learners, their whole understanding of what they know happens through things that they have actually experienced, right? So by having an academically challenging environment, you will foster their understanding by providing a well-structured, rigorous structural procedures where students' inputs are valued and encouraged. In order to do this, you have to think about the fact that students need to be challenged, but they don't know what a challenge really is, right? So if you create a high standard, they'll just go for it, right? You don't need to actually tell them that you're going to make it harder. You just need to have a high level of expectation. Look at this quote here. Students typically don't exceed their own expectation, particularly with regard to academic work. But students will go beyond what they think they can do under certain conditions. One of which is that their teachers expect, challenge, and support them to do so. So basically, if you raise the bar for your students, they will rise to the occasion. Okay? So what are some of the attributes of an academically challenging classroom? And there are 8 of them. Number 1 is active engagement. Students are directly involved in actions that support intentional learning. Okay. Authenticity and relevance. Students can see why this matters. Why is that topic that I'm studying right now is relevant to my daily life? Collaboration and community. So there's some kind of interaction with others in the classroom and with their community, with their parents, with this content so that it seems very relatable. Learner autonomy, that it's not just all coming from the teacher, that the student has some input on what's happening there. Multiple perspectives, giving students a way to see things from different angles so they can see that you can do you can learn rhythm in multiple ways, right, in the music classroom, and you'll see that later in my presentation. But there's multiple ways to approach the same topic. Self-regulation and metacognitive awareness. So students are involved in identifying strategies to increase their learning and take responsibility for their own learning. So they become leaders on their own projects, right? Transformation. Students are expected to use insights gained to reorganize, synthesize, or transform information into new forms. So they basically learn some things, and then they learn how to change that information in their own ways and create their own product. So it's kind of self-driven. And productivity. Students are expected to do something with the knowledge that they have now required because they are now experts at this thing, right? So they can now go out and execute. So those are some of the attributes of an academically challenging classroom, all right? Now, how does a teacher achieve this, right? So here are some strategies to maintain and to achieve an academically challenging environment, okay? Number 1, establish a clear academic focus for each lesson. And by doing that, what you really want to do is have a clear standard listed on the board, and you want to actually announce what that standard is, you know? Provide explicit learning objectives, you know? These are our goals for today, and here's what we're going to achieve today, okay? Make it clear, make it meaningful. By making a lesson meaningful, see if you can apply it to things that students already know, and see if you can grow their knowledge, expand their knowledge, make it relevant to their own experiences. Monitor students' behavior by taking preventative rather than reactive actions. That's such a key topic there. Make sure that when you are planning your lesson, you're thinking about what could happen and how you're going to make sure it doesn't happen and that students stay directly on task. Build cooperation amongst yourself and your student. Um, that reminds me of one of my assistant principals telling me about building a rapport with your students, and that she was actually giving me a compliment, saying that I built such a good rapport with my students so quickly. Um, but that comes with believing that your students can achieve things. So really try your best to have faith in your students and put your faith that they can get things done. Um, and then determine the appropriate level or task difficulty for your students. So you don't want things to be too simple, not too difficult. Just try to drive them a little above where they're expected to be. So that's the way I kind of look at it. If the bar is here, you kind of want to push it right above here. So how do you know that you're on the right track? All right. So you can use these tools to assess yourself. Are you maximizing the instructional time? Is there a lot of downtime in the middle of the lesson? Are students talking while you're looking down at your book? Convey the message that mistakes should be embraced as a valuable part of learning. And that comes down to not condemning students when they mess up, right? Or not trying to make sure that they're always right. Let them explore and get a few things wrong. Are you encouraging productivity by providing students with an appropriately challenging, relevant material? So if things are way too easy and students are talking, you haven't achieved that. So that's something that you can really look at and self-assess. Provide transitions. So if you're going from one topic to the next, are you losing a lot of time because students are in sitting at their desks and now you want them to move over to another part of the classroom, and are you losing a lot of time by doing so? You don't want that to happen, so have a clear plan. Are you, in a music class, we're going to keep on singing as we transition. Communicates high but reasonable expectations for student learning. That's something we talked about earlier, just making it just a little bit harder than what they're used to. Provides academic rigor, encourages critical and creative thinking, and pushes students to achieve goals. So just encourage students to go a little bit beyond what their comfort zone, and they will get there. Encourage students to explore new ideas and take academic risks. So, if a student says, well, I really want to reverse the pattern, I want to do something very different, encourage them. Say, well, try it, see what happens. So now I'm going to give you some personal examples of some things that happened in my classroom this year. These were my first grade students, and I taught them that quarter notes get one count and it gets the sound ta, and eighth notes, which are these connected notes over here, they get half a beat, but they get the sound tt. Now we learned the rhythms, we use our hands and we clap the rhythms, but then we went with a different approach where we started to create rhythms with popsicle sticks. And I gave each student a set of popsicle sticks, and they did it individually first. And then they worked in pairs and they create their own rhythm patterns. Okay? And there's some pictures of my students creating those wonderful rhythm patterns. Well, then after that, they performed the rhythms with their partner. And you can hear a little bit of what that sounded like. Here we go. Okay. So you can see they're working together. They're pointing out which rhythm is which. They're making the appropriate sounds for the rhythms. And my final slide involves the students taking their knowledge that they've learned all school year and putting it in context, right? So one song that uses lots of rhythms that involve ta and tt is the song Bingo, right? B-I-N-G-O, which is the rhythm ta, ta, t-t, ta. So here's an example of the students taking what they learned earlier in the school year and putting it in full context by performing in a song for the grand finale concert at the end of the school year. Here is Bingo by Taylor's First Grade. right. So that was the first grade performance. It's so wonderful to watch that video every time. But at least for us in the music department, every concept that we introduce, we try to put it in the context of a song, right? And we try to relate why this song or why that concept is so relevant when you're performing it in a song, or try to bring some historical context. But I think when students can actively create, perform, and respond the things that they're learning, um, that's when they are really actively engaged in their music learning, and that's when you're really demonstrating that you have an academically challenging environment that integrates their learning, challenges their learning, but they are active participants and leaders in their learning. So I hope that gives you some nice examples, and I hope you can take that with you and take it to your own classrooms. Thank you very much.